This is Parashat Bereshit, the first portion in the Torah, and not by chance. It's called In the Beginning, because sometimes every one of us needs a beginning. Even if we weren't born into it, even if we came in the middle of the story, there is always a new Bereshit. In the beginning, there was nothing, only darkness. And then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Not just light for the eyes, but light for the soul. On the first day, God created light and darkness. He called them day and night, and time itself began to flow. On the second day, God formed the heavens, separating the upper waters from the lower waters. The world began to take shape. On the third day, dry land appeared from beneath the sea. God created trees, plants, and flowers, and for the first time, life began to grow. Fourth day, the sun, moon, and stars were placed in the sky, not only to shine, but to measure time, to mark seasons and sacred days. On the fifth day, the oceans filled with fish, and the skies with birds. The world came alive with movement, sound, and song. And on the sixth day, after all the creatures of the land were formed, God created something different, something sacred, something in His own image. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Man was not just body, but soul. He could feel, think, choose, and God breathed into him a soul of life. But God saw that something was missing. It is not good that man should be alone. So God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep, and from his side He formed Eve, not just a partner, but a true companion. Together they lived in the garden. Together they walked with God. And then came the seventh day, and God completed His work, and He rested. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. That's how Shabbat was born, a pause in the chaos, a sacred space in time, to rest, reflect, and reconnect. In the garden, there was peace, there was joy, there was everything, but also one limit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God said, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it." This wasn't punishment, it was freedom. Because real love comes from choice. But then the serpent whispered to Eve, and she listened. She ate from the tree and gave to Adam. And suddenly, they knew. They were naked, ashamed. They hid. And God asked the eternal question, "Where are you?" Not because He didn't know where they were, but because they didn't know where they stood anymore. They were judged, but they were not destroyed. They were sent into the world to work, to build, to heal. And they began their journey to repair. Eve gave birth to two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain worked the land, Abel raised sheep. Both brought offerings to God, but God accepted Abel's, because Abel brought from his heart, while Cain gave from obligation. Cain burned with jealousy, and God again gently warned, "Sin crouches at the door. Its desire is toward you, but you can conquer it. You can choose, Cain." But Cain chose anger. He killed his brother. And even then, God didn't kill Cain. He marked him. And the Lord set a sign for Cain, so that no one who finds him would slay him. The mark of Cain, not to shame him, but to remind him, "You made a choice. Now live with it, and learn from it." Adam and Eve had another son, Seth. From him, a new path began, a quieter path, a path of hope, 10 generations passed from Adam to Noah, the earth filled with people, with music, with cities, with voices, but also with corruption, with theft, with violence, with pain. And God grieved. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. Until one man stood out, one soul still walking with God. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. But that's a story for another time, for the next portion. So, what did we learn today? That life begins not only with light, but with free will, the power to choose. Adam and Eve fell, but they didn't give up. They took responsibility and kept going. Cain had the same choice, but he turned away. He didn't even try. That's the difference. The Torah doesn't ask us to be perfect, only to keep choosing, to choose good, to choose kindness, to choose love. Because every day can be your own Bereshit. So, what do you choose?